Gridiron Warrior podcast is built for strength and football coaches who want to run the best possible programs for their athletes and their communities. Each episode delivers simple, practical coaching advice that transfers straight from the weight room to the field. No theory, no fluff, no fancy words, just real world strategies from coaches that are living it. So you can build stronger, faster, more durable athletes at any level. From the beginning, I've committed to only bringing on sponsors that I myself use and would confidently recommend to any coach. And that's why I'm fired up to partner with Train Heroic. Train Heroic is the platform I use to write programs, run my own training, and deliver workouts to athletes and whole teams. It's clean, it's coach friendly, and your athletes are actually going to go in the app and use it and enjoy it compared to some of the other ones that are out there. If you're a strength coach looking for a better way to program and get that information to your athletes, or if you're a coach and you just want plug and play, ready to go training programs that you don't have to build, Train Heroic is it, okay? And here's the kicker for anyone that is a supporter of the Gridiron Warrior. Start a free 90-day trial of Train Heroic using the link, trainheroic.com/Gridiron Warrior, and I'll drop 2 12-week training programs right into your account so that you don't have to start from scratch. You can start with 2 12-week programs built in there, tweak them, change them, customize them, and get a good feel of using the app, and those will be in there for you so you can use those. So head to www.trainheroic.com/Gridiron Warrior, start your 90-day free trial, and reply to your welcome email saying that you want those 2 12-week training programs from me, and I'll make sure you get those. If you're a high school coach trying to bring structure and feedback to your jump and speed training, you need to check out the plow mat. The switch mat technology is precise, durable, and it's far more reliable than those laser-based systems. More importantly, the feedback is instant. Your jump height, your contact time, RSI, it's all shown on the remote, the controller, and it's logged in their app as well. You can use it every single day as a checkpoint. Are your athletes hitting plow numbers or thresholds? We use it in season to gauge readiness. You can check their ground reaction force and see if their springs are there as well. It's something that you'll bring out and use every single day in the weight room. If you follow Rich Burnett, the founder, you already know that the education piece is big too. He's a high school guy at heart, and so is the company. So, Plow Mat is there to provide everything that we talk about in Gridiron Warrior, actionable results, real service, great customer service, and they're trying to bring jump training to the next level. So happy to support them. Check out the Plow. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron Warrior podcast. Today, we went in a different direction. We've had football coaches on, we've had strength coaches on, we've had former NFL players on, and I'm always trying to think, what are the areas we haven't touched on? What are the things we haven't hit yet? And the mental side is definitely something I want to bring to the audience a little bit more. So today on the podcast, we have Cyrus, aka The Mental Level. You guys have probably, I bet you haven't, maybe it's shown up on your suggestions on YouTube at some point. This is how I found him, is at some point, and you'll laugh at this one, the Matthew McConaughey meditation was on my...
No way.
I said, what's going on here? This guy sounds just like Matthew McConaughey. This is crazy.
All
Got
right.
me. All right. I was on that beach with Matthew McConaughey, and I said,
That's right.
This is all connected. And we said, let's get on here and let's talk. Obviously, you've done some sports and stuff too, but just mental performance in general. So Cyrus, tell us your story. Take it away. Anything you want to share with the audience, who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing now.
Yes, sir. I won't bore you for too long, but basically I was born right out the womb with severe ADHD. Not literally, but that's how it felt. And so because I struggled so much with my own focus, I had to learn meditation the hard way. As a teenager, I couldn't function in school. But when I finally found meditation, I was kind of off to the races as far as being able to harness the superpower of my mind and my focus. And because I had to learn it the hard way, as I'm sure many coaches can relate to, it becomes a little easier to teach because you know the details and you know the granularity. So I went from, working with groups of civilians, I guess you could say, to gradually gravitating towards athletes because I feel like it's still a massively underutilized audience for this type of work. So that's where I am now.
Awesome. And we'll talk about some things today that I think coaches, because it is something that we barely know anything about. I barely still know strength and conditioning. I've been doing it for forever, but the mental side is something that's so untapped, but there's so much value in it. So if we can get a couple things that maybe we can give our athletes today, I would consider this a win. I got some questions here. We'll rip through some of these, but starting it off, just the first thing first being guided meditation or just meditation in general. you've described as training wheels, right? It
Mhm.
gets you safely going in the right direction, but the goal is hopefully that you don't need a guided meditation. If you always have to put on a certain YouTube video and you have to listen to it and it's got to be in the right setting and this and that, then that's more of a crutch than a tool to help you. We talked about this off air, but even starting with 10 minutes a day is good, but there's probably more you can do. So when it comes to meditation, how do you start with the training wheels? And then what is the ultimate goal when you take those training wheels off? What does that look like for, let's say, for our athletes if we want to get them to that point?
I would say with an athlete, it's not necessarily bad to use guided meditations even for a long time. But I think that it's good to have both skill sets. It would be like going to the gym and working with a trainer and then going by yourself. You want to have both skill sets. They're both useful in different ways. They complement each other. So it's the same with meditations. If you start with 10 minutes and you do guided, then you're going to learn the basic skills. You're going to learn the basic sequence and movement of how to guide yourself into a deeper state of focus. And then when you do a self-guided session, a non-guided session, it's going to be like going to the gym for the first time without the trainer. It's going to be confusing. You're going to question yourself. You're going to be like, am I doing it right? But as you start to stay consistent with it and accept you're going to just suck a little bit at first when you're doing it by yourself, you'll start to gain that self-guided muscle and you'll start to get stronger. And then you'll know that you can do it anywhere, anytime, when you're waiting for the bus, when you're in the locker room before practice, you don't have to have your phone with you. You can just throw down wherever you are. So it's good to have both.
What would you define as a good session? Because I know I personally have explored this area myself, and I catch myself thinking too much of, okay, if I can, every time I lose focus, get myself back to this point or that point, that's a good day. But that's not even the goal of meditation itself, because sometimes you do want to follow that thought or follow that rabbit hole where it
Mm.
goes. And so there's a piece of awareness, there's a piece of maybe a flow state. How do you know you've tapped into that? What would you define as a good session and say, at the very least, if you did this and you grounded yourself and you have better feel of the present, whatever that is, how would you define a good session?
Okay, I'm gonna answer that question by going through the back door and being a little meta about it first, which is to say, think of meditation like the word sports. It's a very generic word. There's tons of different sports, or even strength and conditioning. Right? Forget sports for a second. Think of meditation as strength and conditioning. There's many different types of strength and conditioning you can do, and it's the same with meditation. There's many different purposes and types of meditation. So people think of meditation as this monolithic thing, but just like there's different types of strength and conditioning, there's a meditation for focus. There's a meditation for being able to observe your thoughts, like you said, maybe even being able to hyper focus on the creative flow of certain thoughts. That would be more like a more reflective, creative meditation. There's a meditation for winding down for sleep. There's a meditation for working through certain difficult emotions you feel. And they're different skill sets, but they have certain principles that underlie them, just like there's certain principles that underlie all of strength and conditioning. So you want the right tool for the job, and you want to understand what you're going after at any given point in time. If you're about to do a practice or you're about to play a game, you probably want something that's going to generate a lot of focus and awareness. And a good meditation to that end, how you know you're doing it right, is have you picked a clear point of focus? Do you have a certain level of physical stillness and discipline so that you can get the random impulses that you're feeling out of the way and really hone in on what you're doing? And are you going into a progressively deeper state of focus on that focus point that you've chosen, like your breath or like your hands or like your hands and your breath? Because a lot of athletes are on the ADHD side of the spectrum. And so with people who are like that and think like that and can parallel process a lot of things at once, you almost want to occupy their focus with more than one focus point, because they can do that in their sleep. They can spin multiple plates. And so they can focus on their breath and still entertain a whole inner monologue simultaneously. So if I tell you, or if the audience is listening and they hear me say, focus on your breath right now at the tip of your nostrils, right? You can probably do that and think at the same time. But if I say, focus on your breath and the feeling of the buzzing, tingling energy in your hands at the same time, and occupy your full focus just on the balance of the buzzing, tingling energy in your hands and the breath flowing in and out of your nostrils. Now, all of a sudden, the mind starts to quiet down automatically as a byproduct, because you're giving it enough stimulus that it can't parallel process all the thinking at the same time. So the goal is not to stop the mind from thinking. People have that misconception. Like, I'm going to sit down and clear my mind. They obviously fail to do that because it's basically impossible out of the gate. And so they think they're not doing it right. But the goal is not to clear the mind. The goal is to allow the mind to do its thing in the background, but stay locked in. It's almost like if you were having a conversation with someone at a party and there's like 5 other people behind the person that you're talking to that you kind of want to talk to as well, you could get distracted by that. Or you could say, I accept that distraction is there and I'm going to choose to lock in on the person in front of me. The people behind that person haven't gone anywhere. You're still aware of them, but you're voluntarily choosing to occupy 80 or 90% of your awareness on that person that's in front of you. It's the same thing with meditation. It's just a skill.
I've told people, if you go into a session and your thought process or your intent is, I'm going to shut my brain off. That's impossible. That's happened, especially if this is not something you do on a normal basis. Your brain does not want to shut up. Your brain is
No.
wired to think, especially the type A people, and athletes are always thinking, always questioning themselves and everything that's going on. So you need to give it, like you talked about, a job to do. And when it can focus in on its job and, okay, my job right now is to just this. And if I lose track of my job, remember what my job is and let's get back to that job. Right?
It's a great way to put it.
Once you've done that, then you can move on to different things, whether it's clearing out thoughts that are coming in that you don't want out, or it is, like you talked about for more of a focus session, is harnessing and channeling that focus where you want it to go.
Even Matthew McConaughey can't clear his mind.
No. If coaches want to start doing something, right, whether they're like, you know what, for us, it's August camp right now. The kids are out in the morning. They practice 3 hours in the sun. They have some downtime in the afternoon. I have a lot of kids that come into this weight room because it's large, it's quiet, and it's dark. So it's a perfect place to hide out. Because if you take a nap in your room and you miss meetings in the afternoon, you're going to be in trouble. At least you're in the building if you're in the weight room.
Mm-hmm.
So if coaches want to start instilling something or introducing it, what is like the gateway of a coach can lay everyone down and start with this? What is like something we can do?
First of all, I would say don't lay them down, sit them up. Right?
And why is that?
Because if you're laying them down, they're going to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're exhausted, right? So they're like, great nap time, right? This reminds me of kindergarten. I get to just lay down and have some applesauce and take a nap.
And if they're all falling asleep, that's a bigger sign. That's telling you that you have other issues going on right now. You're overcooking them. If they can wait 10 minutes, it's a problem in itself. So
I would contest that. It's a common misconception, but with meditation, it's sort of a subconscious defense mechanism where in order to not go into the thoughts that people are scared to look at, the mind will often just give the body drowsy chemicals. And so it's not necessarily correlated to whether they're too tired or not. It's very common. You see it with even the most alert, well-rested athletes. They'll sit down to do a meditation and they'll get hit by waves of drowsiness. And that's just part of the process that I've come to expect, guiding this for many years. And I just guide them to be aware of those sensations, not be overtaken by them, and then keep going until eventually their body clicks into that awake and aware, alert state. But you want to counteract that and stack the deck in your favor by sitting upright with good posture so that you're getting the maximum alert chemicals out of the gate. And then you can start sticking to that job, like you said, as opposed to getting pulled into the quicksand of tiredness. But that didn't really fully answer the question.
No, so that got us seated. That got us seated. We got them in the room. We got us seated, eyes open, eyes closed. And then what are we telling them? Where can we direct their energy here?
Yeah. So, I mean, I specialize in working with, I call it focus training in an athletic context, but because that's primarily the type of meditation we're doing in an athletic context, we can use other types of meditation for different purposes in an athletic context, but that's like the baseline because it's pre-practice or pre-game. So it's a focus style meditation. And I specialize in that, and I have tons of free recordings on my YouTube. If you go to the mental level on YouTube and then you hit playlists, the playlist tab, and then you go to high performance, that's all my athletic oriented tracks in one place. And you can use that again as training wheels so that, say you want to guide it yourself and you're like, I don't want this random guy on YouTube to guide my players. You can just get an idea of a sequence that you could use. But if you didn't even want to use that and you wanted to go even more basic, I would say pick 2 focus points, right? Get them seated upright in a chair with good back support, upright, but also relaxed, a nice kind of Goldilocks balance. Get them locked into a spot in front of them with their eyes open, not eyes closed, because again, eyes closed is going to get them sleepy. So eyes open on a spot in front of them, very specific spot, straight down the center of their line of vision. Give them the instruction to resist the urge to fidget or move so they can, chest and stomach can rise and fall with their breathing, but otherwise part of the exercise is to have that physical discipline and not fidget, not move. And that's going to help them with their impulse control. That's going to help them with their muscle control, their body awareness, all of that. And then give them 2 focus points. So one could be their breath, one could be their hands, just like we did a few minutes ago. You could mix it up. You could do feet and hands. You could do feet and breath. You could do ears and tip of your nostril, it doesn't really matter as long as
we
it's,
can leapfrog around a little bit, especially for
yeah,
the ADHD kids in the room. It's probably a good idea to keep mixing the focus a little bit just to keep them on their toes.
exactly. That would be a body scan meditation. So where I was going with it initially is you could just pick those two focus points and instruct them to balance their attention on those two focus points. And when their mind wanders, to come back to those two focus points and just do that for the 5 minutes or the 10 minutes. But if you wanted to do a leapfrog style, that would be like a body scan meditation. And what Scott's talking about is a specific exercise I kind of just creatively made up, where you take two focus points and then you take the bottom focus point and bring it up over the top. So I would say, be aware of your ankles and your knees. And then I would take the bottom focus point at the ankles and bring it up to the hips. So, okay, now leapfrog up and be aware of your knees and your hips, and so on and so forth, leapfrogging up the body. It's just a creative way to keep guys engaged and in a dynamic focus that they're used to moving their attention in, while still keeping them in a highly focused state. But what I'll say real quick is, well, actually, let me leave it there, and then maybe I can elaborate further in the future.
No, I'm good with that. I want to get into a couple more things for our athletes.
Mm.
The two topics that come to mind are, one, the idea of flow state, and it is something that you can. It's not something that can just magically show up and you're like, man, that kid was in the flow today. You used to having that being a more often occurrence. So any thoughts, suggestions on, we'll start with that one. Thoughts, suggestions on how to get into that quote unquote flow state. What does that look like? And is that something that either coaches can start to incorporate into a pregame routine, or something that they can teach their athletes when they're sitting in their lockers pregame, how to get into the right spot to hopefully be in a position to have that flow state on game day?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You want to put yourself in position for the flow state to come to you. So again, you can stack the deck in your favor, but flow state is something that comes to you. But because it's something that comes to you, and because people don't do mental training, flow state shows up way less often than it could. And then the mythology around it becomes, oh, that player's in the flow. Like, it happens once in a blue moon. Oh, we all remember that one or two games that we had that were in a crazy flow state. And then the storytelling around it becomes, oh yeah, it just comes to you once in a while. Like, it's this divine intervention of flow state, and you can't control when it happens, and blah, blah, blah. You can't control it showing up. You can't force it to happen, because it is ultimately about letting go and being in the flow and being in the moment. But you can massively stack the deck in your favor so that it shows up more often. So the first thing is starting to rewire the subconscious belief that flow state is this fluky thing that can't happen, and starting to affirm the belief that it can show up frequently. It's not going to show up every time, and it's subjective, and there's levels to it. There's like crazy flow state, and then there's just kind of like, yeah, I was in a flow, like it's not as intense, but that can happen more and more often. So as you start to understand the belief, rewire that belief, you can start to receive that flow state on a more regular basis. From there, it's understanding that probably the main defining characteristic of flow, it's debatable, but you would say the overarching characteristic of it is deep, undivided attention on what's in front of you, right? If you ask any player, how did they feel when they were in a flow state? They were like, I was completely locked in on what was in front of me. That's a skill that can be trained. That's literally what I do with athletes, is training them to go deeper and deeper in that state of total immersed presence. Then their brain and body is tuned into that state. And then naturally the deck is stacked in their favor to drop into that state, because, studies show that the meditative benefits last 24 to 48 hours. My experience is it's more in the 24-hour range. So that's why I do game day sessions with players, because you're tuning their brain and body to be in that, to be primed for that flow state, and then they can much more consistently drop into that flow state. So on one hand, it's the subconscious belief. On the other hand, it's the training to actually stack the deck in your favor.
And I think it's something that a lot of kids just naturally do, right? Is game day. I've got my routine. I put my headphones on. I'm in my world, in my element. But I always wonder too, there's got to be a balance, I'm sure, of, you want to get into your own individual flow, but there is a collective power, especially in the sport of football, of being in a team type of flow. So
Totally.
I know you work mostly with individuals, but is there anything about coming together as a team, and how do you harness and channel that?
Yeah, I work with combat athletes. I work with some football players, but I primarily work with basketball players. And so that's what I love, because you get to do it in a team context and get multiple guys on the same team bought in to that type of training. And you're absolutely right, is that it creates a collective focus. If a player's just in their own zone and they're listening to music in their headphones, or that's great, but it's not generating that collective focus. Like Phil Jackson, when he was working with Kobe and MJ and the Bulls and the Lakers, he talked about that being his philosophy that he got the guys together for 10 or 15 minutes before games, and they breathed as one, and they became one unit, and they set a collective intention to drop their ego and to serve each other. And then, of course, if that's what's on your mind before the game, it's going to play out on the gridiron or on the court. And yeah, does that answer the question? Or
It does, and coaches do this already, right? They always are. They're bringing their up. They're giving speeches. They're doing all those things,
Hmm.
but it's being mindful of saying, "Hey, we're in a moment right now, and we're doing this together. Let's do something that we're all going to do right now to solidify that. And whatever happens out there in the quote unquote fog of war that is a football game, there's going to be some crazy stuff happen. There's going to be bad plays, good plays, excitement, disappointment. But if we can collectively decide that when we need to, we're going to slow down, we're going to take a breath, and we're going to refocus on the next thing in front of us." I think the coaches that have that ability to get that message across to their kids, and when you start hearing the kids say it back to each other and you hear it saying back to the coach, that's when you know you've got something special because they see the bigger picture here. And it's not just, I've got to do my job. It's, we're doing this, we're in this together, we're in this journey, this experience, good, bad, or ugly. And there's something very powerful about that. And I think that's selfishly, that's why I still am in strength and conditioning and in football because I love that aspect of it. And I could go do personal training and do those things, but I'd miss that team piece. And I'm not out there. I'm not out there trying to make tackles and win plays, but I still feel like I'm a part of that collective energy. So there's something special about that for sure.
Totally. Do you mind if I riff off something you said for a
Riff it.
moment? Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that it's very common in sports because, again, the mental game and the mental training is, in my opinion, kind of still in its infancy. Like there's a lot of juice that can be squeezed out of it that's not being looked at all. And one of those ways is, again, what you said, talking about, oh, let's focus on what's in front of us. Let's focus on the next play. It's one thing to say that, right? You could yell at a player like, focus up, right? And they'll focus for about 5 seconds. But if you don't train them to focus, and meditation is a tool to do that, then you're leaving a massive advantage on the table because you can say, focus, guys, focus, and we'll echo that back to each other until you're blue in the face. But that's very different than actually having taken, you said 10 or 15 minutes, and I get that's the standard in sports, but I start team trainings at 30 minutes, which sounds crazy. And a lot of coaches would be like, hey, man, game days are crazy. There's no way. But the thing is, once you understand the advantage that comes when you allocate more time to it, it becomes a no-brainer. And I'll give you an analogy. It's like, okay, in strength and conditioning in football, like how long did it take for strength and conditioning to become a thing since from when football was invented until when sports?
I mean, football was invented in the 1800s and strength and conditioning didn't happen until probably 50, 60 years later. And even still, it's got a long way to go. I still think there's a lot of things we do wrong that we could do better in this industry. It's been about 60, 70 years, but we're just getting started.
Absolutely. From what I saw, it was 100 years.
Yeah.
So it was 100 years until players were essentially allowed to lift weights because they thought it would put them at a disadvantage. And then for the last 50, 60 years, it's become the norm because it's an obvious advantage. And so if you said to a strength and conditioning coach, hey, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to train these guys in strength and conditioning, how's that going to go?
It's not going to go.
And so that's like saying, exactly, that's like saying to me, hey, do your thing for 10 minutes. I can do it just like you could do your thing for 10 minutes if you were forced to. And doing your thing for 10 minutes would be better than nothing, but it would be a joke compared to if I gave you 30 minutes as a coach, right? If I'm the head coach and I say, Scott, you got 30 minutes, you're going to be able to do not just 3 times more, you're going to be able to do exponentially more because the rhythm that you get in over the course of that 30 minutes is much more intense towards the end after the player's warmed up than in the first 10 minutes. And so it's exponential. It's the exact same thing with meditation and focus training. If you give me 10 minutes, the player goes, by the end of 10 minutes, they're like, yeah, I'm a little more focused. I'm a little more relaxed. It's an advantage over doing nothing, but their mind is still kind of busy, right? Whereas towards the end of 30 minutes, they're in the fucking zone. Like they're relaxed, they're lasered in, right? And if you get a whole team in that state before a game, you have an absurd advantage over your competition. Whereas if you say, oh, give me 10 minutes, it's like, yeah, you have an advantage, right? Because the team's collectively more focused, but it's not the same level of intensity of focus. And so people will scoff initially at 30 minutes on a game day to do meditation, but it's because they don't understand the advantage it can actually create.
And I've got to imagine the number of reps of refocusing yourself that you can accumulate in 30 minutes is way more powerful than 10 minutes. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of distractions. Your mind is going to be busy. You're going to be able to bring yourself back. But again, just like you talked about too, it gets stronger, it gets more powerful, it gets even more locked in. The
Yep.
longer you can do that and the more time you commit to it. I'm thinking of opportunities when we do it. And if we travel, we go somewhere in a hotel on a Friday night. Kids have nothing to do in a hotel on a Friday night. So it's like
Yep.
that's for us can be a great opportunity. And we've taken X number of mental reps the night before on refocusing. And like
Yep.
we talked about it, it's going to stick with them. And they may not know that that's the reason why they're able to refocus and recalibrate. But that's definitely going to be a piece. I think that's
It, it,
probably one of the hardest things is it's not like you lifted this weight, you lifted heavier the next time, you got stronger. The mental stuff is a little bit harder to see that.
I would disagree respectfully in that my experience is that players are not confused. They generally feel it because they go, "Oh, I just did that 30-minute meditation session. I feel locked the fuck in." There's not a confusion because they're like, "I just exerted a lot of effort to refocus, refocus, refocus." And to your point, it becomes more intense towards the end to where, just to make it more specific, let's say in that first 10 minutes, a player on average could stay focused on their breath and their hands for 10 seconds on average without getting distracted, maybe 15. Towards the end of the 30 minutes, they might be in the zone and locked in without getting distracted for like a minute or two, which doesn't sound like much, but think about a kid, right? Like in Gen Z, who to be locked in,
Who can't go a minute without his iPhone in his yeah,
that's what
no
I'm
doubt.
saying. To have zero stimulation, it's just their breath. To be locked in continuously for 1 or 2 minutes, that's getting their brain and body in a state that's highly conducive to translating that directly to the game, right? They're going to be way more lasered in on the game, way more precise, way more muscle control, all the things that you want. You're working directly on the hardware. You're not sitting around talking about, "Hey guys, focus on the next best thing." That's better than not saying it. But what's way better is actually training it. And so when players do it, they tend to be like, "This is pretty obvious. I just did this and I'm super locked in on a level that I normally am not." So,
Awesome. Let's shift
yeah.
gears here. Quick break. This episode is powered by Endorphin. Endorphin is a performance nutrition company built for high school, college, or professional athletes who take their training seriously. Their patented fintech bottles right here come preloaded with clean, third-party certified, so NSF, protein. All you have to do is add liquid, add water, add milk, whatever, shake it and go. No blender, no mess, no excuse for not getting your protein in. It's trusted by over 150 college and pro teams because it works in actual training environments, on the road, in the weight room, post practice. When recovery matters most, Endorphin is there. So if you need a discount, you want team pricing, reach out to me or check out Endorphin online and tell them that you're interested in team pricing. All right. Now back to the show because I think my audience maybe came in and they were like, "Oh, I'm going to get some stuff for my athletes here," but plot twist,
Let's go.
this is for you because
Yeah.
I work with a lot of high school programs across the country. I work with some college coaches and help them out too. But it's an industry where if you're a high school coach, you got to wear 5 different hats. You're the math teacher by day, the football coach by night, the bus driver when you need to.
Yeah.
Some of our coaches also run the weight room. And then you got to go home. You got to be a dad. You got to be a husband. They're all different hats you have to wear. And I think the people that gravitate towards this job also gravitate towards activity and going, and they don't like to slow down. They don't like to stop. They think,
Mhm.
taking 30 minutes out of a day to do this sounds like it would be the most painful thing in the world because that 30 minutes could get filled with this or that or another
Right.
meeting or another. So for the coaches out there that are like that are hearing this and going, "Oh my God, 30 minutes where I don't do anything. I just sit there," sounds nauseating. What do you say to them and what do they need to do to
Yeah,
get themselves in check first?
for sure. I want to give them a very respectful mental sledgehammer and say, look how you would assess an athlete who's acting like that, who's just pushing nonstop, burning themselves out. Maybe that's good for you short term. You're like, okay, this guy's really running himself into the ground and he's seeing short term results. But if you're a smart coach, you're seeing how he's going to pay for that on the back end. And as a coach, you are an athlete. You're just a mental athlete, right? And you still need your body and your resources and your faculties operating at a high level. And you know that your athletes need to rest and recover at an elite intentional level in order to perform at their best in a sustainable way. And you are no different as a coach. You just think that you're different. You think that you're an exception. You rationalize it and you say, I've been on this planet longer and I've been around the block more and so I can get away with it and I know how to push my own buttons and drink Red Bull and like whatever it is. But that's BS, right? You're actually going to, the reality of it is it's a subconscious part of, and I say this with respect because I respect the competitive stamina and grind and intensity, but there's a subconscious part of many coaches who are basically just pushing nonstop because they have something to prove, and they don't want to hit that off button at all because they think that if they just sprint nonstop, that's going to get them the most mileage of where they want to go. But it comes at a cost. And if you want to win at a consistent and high level, you need to master the ability to switch gears, to switch off, and then to switch on and get yourself going. And because you observe athletes, that the best ones know how to switch off, are super intentional about doing that, and then are super intentional about winding themselves up and getting themselves going. So you're no different. And if you treat yourself as different, and you don't hold yourself accountable, and you don't prioritize taking even 10 minutes to decompress at the end of your day, where you do nothing, or you just meditate, or you journal, you do something reflective to actually come down in a very intentional, ritualistic way, you're leaving a lot on the table as far as how much you can actually put out, and you're getting tricked by a part of your mind that's just pushing you endlessly, but not seeing the big picture.
I always tell people, I think part of it is the American dream of just work, work more, and do as much as you can so that if you do lose, you can at least say, we did everything we could. And that could be the very reason why you lose, is because you did too much.
Totally.
And it's a little scary to leave something on the table and leave a little bit and cut some meetings short or take some time away, because you're like, man, what if I just did this instead? What if I did more? But just like you talked about, those are tricks in your head, and something up there is saying, keep going, keep pushing. Maybe it's because you're scared of what happens if you stop for a second.
And I want to
It is.
push back on what you said,
Yeah.
because I know you know this, but I think other people might misinterpret this, which is saying I'm going to switch off for a bit, or I'm going to leave something on the table, is actually not what's happening. If you're resting, you're doing something active and intentional. Like, I know you get this, but a lot of people don't get this. They subconsciously think, if I'm slowing down, if I'm resting, if I'm decompressing, I'm not doing something, and I could be doing something. But actually, you are doing something. You're setting up your nervous system, your body, and your brain to optimize and be at peak levels in a consistent overall big picture way. And so it just appears to be a non-action because you're sitting there resting, decompressing. But if you're being precise, it's actually, you're doing something very intentional, very productive.
I tell coaches all the time, when you're hopped up on Red Bulls all day and you're go, your baseline might be here. But if you have the ability to take 10 minutes and just come back down and be intentional about it, say, that is my plan, that is my intention. In the summer, we do all of our stuff in the morning early, and it's go from 6:30 to 9:30, 10 o'clock. But I'll come back inside, and I have a routine now, but I take care of what I need to take care of, and then turn the lights off, 10 minutes, nothing. Because I know if I can bring myself down there at some point, then my baseline is no longer going to be up here. I'm going to slowly bring that baseline down here. And when I need to come down all the way, it's a lot easier for me to tap into that. Some people have just never come down from baseline.
Yep.
So to ask them to do that, one, is really hard to do. But then two, when they need to do it, they don't have the skills. They don't, because they've never acknowledged it, and they don't want to find out what happens when they don't go there. And it may just be the first couple times you do it, you don't get very far. You try to come down to baseline and you can't, because you're thinking about this and that. And to them, I say, well, keep trying it. Take the 10 minutes. What is the harm in taking 10 minutes right now to just try and clear those thoughts? Because the other side of it, there are way more benefits than there are from losing 10 minutes a day, because you're not losing those 10 minutes.
Totally. And what I would say is, treat it like a skill and approach it the way you would any other skill if you're a competitor and you're precise about the way you do things, because you wouldn't go into the gym with no plan, not knowing any of the machines, not knowing what you're doing. It would be a self-defeating strategy, because you'd walk out of the gym after 10 minutes being like, I didn't really feel like I got anything out of this. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe it's not going to help. Go in with a plan. Use the playlist that I mentioned earlier, the high performance playlist at the mental level on YouTube. Use some of those tracks so you're actually practicing skills in that time in a productive, intentional way, so that you're setting yourself up to not just walk away and being like, oh, I just kind of got lost in my mind for 10 minutes and now I feel even more stressed, and maybe this whole decompressing or meditation or whatever it is that I'm doing is not for me, and I just got to keep going with what I'm going with. So set yourself up for success as opposed to defeating yourself.
And if I have, and you can let me know if you agree or disagree, but piece of advice I have for coaches out there is do not try to multitask this. Do not try and flip this on your drive home and think that counts.
Boom. Yep.
Don't get on a treadmill and say, oh, I'm going to listen to one of these and I'm just going to slow down on the treadmill, and just because as soon you're choosing physical activity, go, or driving, yep. That's very, and that, again, you've immediately lost the intent of what you're trying to do. And it's you just stacking activities on top of activities, which is what got you into this problem in the first place.
Sounds like you know some coaches.
Maybe I know a guy or two. Who knows? But I mean, you got to. I think you agree with me that
Yeah.
the best way and the only way to really get this is you have to be committed to it, and you have to be intentional about it, and you got to put everything else aside for 10 minutes, if
1000%. I mean,
not more.
coaches know that about commitment. Coaches know that you can't half-ass stuff. Don't treat this as any different, and you'll be good. You'll be rolling if you approach this in a serious way.
All right, last topic I have on my list that I think would be great for coaches, definitely, but athletes as well, is the idea of sleep.
Mm,
Because yes, we know how valuable sleep is, and I work mostly with college kids who don't like to sleep. I was one of those kids that
mm,
like I'm up all night, my body can stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning and turn around and practice the next day. And
yeah.
I can't do that now at 34, obviously, but and I have no problem falling asleep. My wife will be the first to attest that my head hits the pillow and it's done. There's no nighttime wind down for me.
Mm.
But there are some coaches. I know there's some people out there or some athletes out there that can't fall asleep because their brain just can't slow down. It's thinking about everything that happened that day. They're thinking about the next day. What advice do you have around the idea of sleep, getting them to not think about the practice plan that they have laid out for tomorrow, not thinking about maybe the thing they said to an athlete that they wish they didn't. Sometimes those things are hard to leave your head at night, but super important to clear your mind so you can get a good night's sleep. So around that topic, what advice do you have?
Yeah, well, first off, I would say that's your mind trying to process all the things that you didn't give it time to properly process while you were awake. So that's one thing, is taking that time to sit and reflect. Like, you can meditate, you can reflect, you can journal, some kind of ritual that resonates with you to actually feel through the things, think through the things, reflect on the things, as opposed to just actively thinking, problem solving things, but actually giving your mind time to process what it wants to process, because it's kind of just doing a revenge tour when you hit your head down on the pillow. It's like, this dude didn't give me any time to actually reflectively process these things. He just tried to problem solve everything. And so now I'm going to try to work this through on an emotional level or on a more reflective level, because this is the only time he's actually not doing anything. Right. So it's just misunderstanding that time that you're putting your head down on the pillow as a time to do it, because you haven't given it any other time. So first thing is to obviously be proactive and carve out some time to be more reflective, or to give your emotions time to actually breathe and pass through, and understand that your system and your mind is a machine, and it often needs some kind of ritual, especially if you're a hard driving person, to know that it's time to shut down. And then the second thing is, and this could play into the ritual if you wanted it to, is there's something called yoga nidra, or you can just call it sleep meditation. I have it on my YouTube again at the mental level playlist, sleep meditation. There's tons of free resources there. You can just throw one on, and it guides you through a body scan. It guides you through a sequence that allows you, with your attention, to decompress and to segue into sleep, as opposed to just hoping that this machine that is your mind that's been going all day is just going to magically shut off if you're not like Scott, right? If you're the type of person that just keeps going, your mind needs some kind of cue and some kind of process to deliberately unwind. And so that's a resource that works for a lot of people that you can check out and start to implement.
The 10 to 20, 30 minutes you take in the middle of the day after that stressful activity, whether it's practice, whether it's a game, if you can do it then, you will not have to pay double the price when you go to bed. And I
Totally.
think that's what it comes down to, is build that into your routine, build that into, okay, I got to let this stuff go, and it's here. If I got to think about it, I got to think about it. But I always use the computer analogy as well, is you have 1,000 tabs open, and in that 10 minutes, you're going to find out which tabs you can close. A thought will come up, and oh, I got to remember to tell this person this. Do you need to tell them right now? Do you need to
Right.
tell them tonight? Do you need to tell them when your head is on the pillow and your phone is across the room? You don't. That one go. You'll open that tab up tomorrow when you turn the computer on and get your brain going again.
Mm,
So it's closing those tabs out. But I think the lesson here is put some time in the day, and your life a little bit easier when you go to bed.
totally.
This has been great. If people want to, we've mentioned it probably 10 times already, but if we want to follow more of your stuff, because not only do you have a ton of free stuff on YouTube, which is phenomenal, I think it's plug and play, right? Just click a video that interests you and get started at least. But you have more than that. So where can we find all of your stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's on YouTube. It's on a free meditation app, which is the biggest free meditation library in the world, called Insight Timer. If you want something that's more audio based as opposed to YouTube where you have to open a video, you can download Insight Timer, and I'm on there as the mental level. And trying to think what else. I work as a private coach with athletes, with teams. If that's something that's of interest and you want to explore that, you can contact me directly at the mental level, all one word, thementallevel@gmail.com. And yeah.
Awesome. This is great. Thank you so much for coming on. And thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Gridiron Warrior Podcast.
Thanks, Scott.
If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to keep getting better, I encourage you to check out my new community, the Gridiron Warrior Insiders. Got it right here on the phone. The app is clutch. There's so many things in there that I think you'll find valuable. We have the weekly film study where you can go live with me, ask any questions you want. There's no Q&A, no big deal. I always have a topic that we're going to hit on every single week, and we record those too if you can't make it. With the Wildcat webinar, that's where I call somebody else in to run the offense, and they come in and they bring a presentation about something that they're an expert in and give us some fresh insight, new information. I have unreleased podcasts. There's about 10 or 15 that haven't gone live yet. You can listen to them early before anyone else. We have the equipment room, so discounts, whether it's Train Heroic, Plyomat, OVR, or even my own courses. You have discounts in the equipment room. Okay, the free safety, anything that I want to throw in there, bonus programs for yourself as a coach, you name it, it's in there. And we have over 50 coaches right now that are helping each other. So we post questions and coaches will work together and provide insight and share information because that's what it's all about is coaches getting better. So if you want to check that out, the links are in my bio, the links at the end of this podcast. Check it out there, Gridiron Warrior Insiders.